many of you have ever heated with wood? Daryl, I know you did at home when you were a kid. Now, wouldn't it have been nice if you could put a piece of oak or popple in the stove and it would burn but not go away and it would just give you heat? Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? But that's what that tree was doing. It was burning, but yet not burning up. That, yeah, you got it. Exactly. They have those nowadays with those full fireplaces where, they have the logs. Now, Dwayne probably has that out at his place, right, Dwayne? You have one of those? Propane? Oh, okay. So you see, you have that, and yes, I can understand the tree burning, but a tree burning and not burning up is what really got his attention. I mean, back then they didn't have that, as Jimmy was saying, the propane burner to cook his meals with or anything. He had to find little sticks to get stuff to boil water and cook his food and stuff. So this is what how God got his attention. It's like that song, this little light of mine. I'm going to let it, that when you have that, back in the old days, Donna, we used to have that where they had candles. We don't do that anymore. But then they have flashlights. But you see, the light is something God lit, is what we're reflecting. And we don't burn up when we're lit with God's light, do we? When you're on fire with God, do you burn up? No. And it's what was happening here. A burning tree that isn't burning up is what got Moses' attention. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Elijah here, but I do. So verses 3 and 4, if you would please, Joy. Okay, now imagine, if you will, for a minute there, Vicki. I haven't had a chance to talk to this. I'm going to just get over here. Imagine, if you will, for a minute, Vicki, that somebody is covertly hiding behind a sand dune or something else and observing Moses, and the brother is talking to a burning bush. What do they think? They think of Moses. He's gone a little lonely. The little loony. The brother's been out in the desert too long with those sheep. Okay, there's a problem here, folks. He's talking to a bush. That's what I mean. He had to have recognized the Lord, because the Lord's voice, because he talked to him and he heard him when he was writing Job and Genesis. So he'd been out a little long in the heat. But from verses 5 or 6, it talks that the Lord talks to Moses through the bush and tells him to take off his shoes because he's on holy ground, right? That's what he tells him to do. And what do you think Moses' frame of mind was when this happened? What did Moses think? Huh? But since he recognized God's voice, I think it was acceptable to him. Back then, in that culture, it was acceptable or expected, if you will, that you did take off your shoes when you went into a holy place or in someone's house, and servants always wore or had their shoes off. So Moses, that was something where, okay, I accept it. And so here we have in this part of it, Moses spent, or Jesus at first, let's talk about him. He spent how many days in the wilderness? 40, right? He spent 40 days in the wilderness to get close to God, to commune with God during fasting. And Moses, it took him just a little bit longer. It took him 40 years. So Moses is out there, 40 years later, he's being called. This is his calling. That was Jesus' calling after those 40 days. Okay. And Moses has been herding sheep now for 40 years, and he's called to do this. And so off we go. He's 80 years old, and he's ready for his public ministry. It might be remembered or easier to accept if we recognize the way to do something is slow and steady instead of quick and fast. Moses took the slow and steady way, and then he's ready to go. And so now we have Moses at 80 years old, and off we go. Now the angel of the Lord. Let's get into the next one. Now, Augie, you read verses 7 and 8, and Julie, would you read verse 9? Or Robin can. That's all right. Exodus 3, verse 9. Augie, you have that? Okay. Yeah, verse 9. Exodus 3 and verse 9. So, again, that just reinforces what you read from the memory verse, Augie, about how God has heard and he's seen the oppression, and he has heard it, and he wants to come down and deliver them. Okay, that's what we're talking about. That. So how do you think Moses feels about this? You know, God's saying, I want to deliver him. And he remembers what it was like, and so do you expect that Moses maybe is in favor of this? Right? But this is 40 years later, and Moses isn't involved. God's saying, I want to do this. Moses probably, yeah, good idea, because he remembers what's going on, right? He remembers what's going on, and so he thinks, yeah, that's a good idea. And he recalled, remember you're talking about before, the moanings and groanings, remember the whips, and he killed that one dude? Okay. Anyway, they had heard the problems, and then he talked about my people. Now, without going into a lot of stuff, remember what two books Moses had written? Job and Genesis. In Genesis, we have Abraham. And remember how God talked to Abraham? And so he's using terminology that Moses had already written down, and he understood. So verse 10. Robin, you got that? Or he doesn't have his glasses on. Maybe Exodus 3 and verse 10. Oh, now didn't God just say I was going to deliver it? Oops, now what happens? All of a sudden it's Moses that's having to go. The other shoe seems to fall. Wait a minute, God, didn't you say that you were going to do it? What's this business of me having to do it? Now, this is not a good thing, okay? Moses has been hurting that, and so he really isn't probably liking that at all. Tracy, verse 11. Oh, you don't, Donna? Oh, okay. Exodus 3 and verse 11. So there we have it. What does Moses say? Who am I? How am I supposed to do this? I'm just a herder of sheep. I can't do this. This is way beyond my skill set. He seems to have forgotten about those 28 years of learning to lead people. I mean, he has been leading sheep, and that is not always an easy task. And so here we have Moses saying, well, wait a minute, who am I? This is way beyond my skill set. I can't do this. There's no way that, he just thinks, why is he thinking that way? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You need to go. Yeah, you're going to go. You're going to be my agent, my ambassador. I'm going to do it. But that isn't how Moses interpreted it, is it? He was saying, all he heard was that, Moses, you're going. And Moses is saying, ain't no way. I'm not doing this. You know, it didn't work out so well last time, did it, Candy? No, it didn't work out so well. And so, yeah, Moses was limiting himself because he was having to do it. And as you said, Augie, there is no way that Moses could do it. No way at all. And verse 12, pardon? It's going to fail. It's going to fall flat on, and whoever is going to be up here next week is going to find out that, hey, there's some problems. As soon as he enters, puts his foot in the door, we got problems. So, Daryl, verse 12, if you would, please. Okay, now we're not going to get into a lot of stuff going here, but we have there God telling him, I'm going to be with you. Okay, I'm going to handle this. I just want you to go there and be my mouthpiece, my ambassador, if you will, my agent. Okay, so, yeah. So we have that, and Moses is now, uh, the task isn't going to be easy. By no means, no shake, no whatever. It's not going to be an easy task, but God's going to be with him. And then he's going to serve here. But remember, he's going to serve in this Mount of Horeb here, but he has to go there first and get back there before he can have that blessing. So this is what we have happening now to Moses. So in this part, the voice of God from the bush, and not just an ordinary angel. Hear God. Oh, welcome. Come on in. If you have a question, just holler up and ask me. My name is Bob, okay? All right. And we'll try and answer it, and if I don't, I'll just have Scott or Jimmy or somebody like that do it, and they got it all. So we've just been talking about the burning bush with Moses, okay? And how a bush was burning, but yet it wasn't burning up. And that's what really got his attention, because of Moses' attention. He'd been herding sheep, and he learned to be kind of humble. Maybe while he was in Babylon, at first he got a big head because, you know, he was next in line to be Pharaoh. He was next in line to be Pharaoh. And if they don't have a Bible, and they want, oh, okay. Okay, I didn't know. So here we go. And so we went to this part. Who am I? That's what. Who am I that things should go this way? Who am I? That's what Moses is saying. And now we're going to the next part of the name of the Lord. And now let's go to verse 13. Perry, you got that? Exodus 3 and verse 13, if you will. Okay, so we've gone from the who am I, right, to the who are you. That's what Moses, who shall I say that you are, that I'm supposed to come here and do this thing? Moses is still not quite buying into the program, is he? He's still not buying into it. So, who are you? Now, verse 14. Jim, 3 and verse 14. Does that make much sense to anybody? I am that I am? Exactly. Now remember, what two books had Moses written? Genesis and Job. In Genesis, God had spoken to Abraham these same words that Moses had written down, so he understood what was being said. And this is talking about the God that is the present and future, the eternal God. Okay? I am that I am. So God is, in a nice way, even though Moses isn't buying into this plan at all, he says, no way, this isn't happening. But God is telling him, this is who I am. So we go on then, I am that I am. In verse 15, let me see, Candy? Okay, now, remember he had been writing Genesis, and so now we're referring back to Abraham again, and this is Yahweh, which is the most common name of God in the Old Testament. Moses is understanding all of this. Okay, he knows all of this that's going on. And then in verses 16 and 17, which, we can go into, and either you don't have that. Vicki, Exodus 3, verses 16 and 17, if you will. Yep. You see why I wasn't going to read that? I knew all of those names were coming up. So anyway, verses 16 and 17. These, without going into a lot of extra, are talking about Elohim. Now this is a plural, but he's using singular verbs. You know what I'm talking about? You know, I wouldn't say, Candy, she are going to do this. I would say she is, but we are. Okay? But here, this Elohim is a singular verb. It's the Godhead, but we serve one God. Okay? So we just kind of get that all out of the way, and everybody understands that. And it's referring back to Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God. That was all three of them involved in creation. Now, skipping down to verses 19 and 20. Laura, do you have those? Exodus 3, verses 19 and 20. Okay, so now here we have it. And God here, he's talking to Moses, isn't he? And what's he saying? Yeah, I'll get them to free you, but it's not going to be an easy job, isn't it? It's not going to be one of these things where you glide in at night and lead them out by the next morning. You're going to be involved in some things here. It's going to take a little longer time before you're going to get out. There's going to be some trouble here. And you're just not going to get out, right away. And so there are going to be challenges. So in this part, Moses asks, well, I asked you who was I, or who am I to do this? Now I'm asking, who are you to tell me to do this? And God told Moses he was, by using terminology which he would have known the deeper meaning given to him. So we're talking about the Yahweh, the God of I am that I am. He understood all of that. It's not, some people start in reading this and they forget that Moses had already written Genesis, so he would have understood all of these things and was able to take in the things that God was saying to him. So now let's move on to the 4 excuses, and we're going to go to chapter 4. So if you get over there, and Scott, I guess you're next up. 4 verse 1. So, who am I? Who are you? And now we're coming up with excuses, and it's the first excuse is, what do I tell them? What do I tell them? The people won't believe me. There is no way that God appeared to you when you ran out on us 40 years earlier. God, there's no way that the people are going to believe me. It's just not going to happen. You've been gone 40 years while we've been suffering. Yeah, true, you've been herding sheep, but still you haven't been suffering like we've been suffering for the past 40 years. So, what's your daughter's name? Alyssa. Can you read verses 2 to 5 of Exodus 4, or don't you have it? Okay. Huh? Oh, she just says she's not ready, so that's fine. Verses 2 to 5 of chapter 4. Okay. If you didn't hear, she said that. I guess I'm happy to know that I'm not the only one that runs away from snakes. So even little garter snakes. Donna, you too, huh? Oh, yeah. Absolutely not. Yeah, it's just not your thing. Yeah, I can understand that. Hmm. Yeah. I, yeah. Who am I to do this? And this is another excuse, okay? But what is God doing here? Yeah, going to work with him, Augie? Yeah, God uses what you have. Go ahead, Candy. Hmm. He's reasoning with God, but he's coming up with excuses. We're going to find out that because he keeps adding to the problem here. But so we have God uses what we've got. So God's going to come up to Anita and say, "What have you got, Anita?" Got a sweater to keep her warm. Maybe she can share that with somebody. See? Got something. You're going to do the same with Laura. I mean, what did Moses have? He had that cane or a staff or a rod, whatever. Well, yep, whatever you have that's available, God uses. And he uses it for his benefit. Now, the snake is something in Egypt that's a whole nother thing. And there's a thing called snake charmers and stuff like that. And when a snake charmer goes and picks up a snake, how do they pick it up? By the head. Why do you pick it up by the head? It can't bite you. Even I, with a little old garter snake or those bull snakes, I still grab them by the head and take them across the road. She would just as soon I disposed of them. But I dispose of them across the road because they eat various things. But I grab them behind the head because, I don't know, even though they're not poisonous, I still don't want to get bit by them. I still don't want to. That's right. And so here, God is telling Moses to grab it by the opposite end. That takes nerve. That takes nerve. Pick it up by the tail. God uses what we have. By picking the snake up by the tail, uh, the snake was also a god for the Egyptians, and that's showing mastery of God over the gods of Egypt. That's showing the power of God over things that are going on. The Egyptians, and in fact, last week, Scott, you talked about Ra, correct? Ra is the god, that's what Pharaoh was Ra. And so the snake is opposed to that. So when you pick that up and do that without getting into a lot of discussion, those two forces are showing that God has power over that. So you would think maybe that Moses would be, okay, I'm cool, I'm good with this, I'm good with this. And so, but he wasn't. Verses 6 and 7, Augie, of Exodus 4. Okay, here, the first recorded instance of leprosy was in this part of the world, okay? That's written down. I'm not saying that's where it first happened, but where it was written down. But here God is showing, I can make you clean. I can take care of things. Things are going to happen. You know, it's still another sign because people, even in the Egyptian Empire, they recognized leprosy right away. And when you bring out a hand, hey, Jim, I got leprosy and I put it right in front of you. Yet you're leaving, and I wouldn't blame him. He's leaving. That's the same way with him, but he puts it back in, and there it is clean. And so we have another sign of God's power, okay? And still, he's not believing, and so he's told to go take some water out of the Nile. Now, the Nile is worshipped by the Egyptians, okay? They think this is, of course, if you know anything about Egypt, if it wasn't for the Nile, Egypt would be nothing but a dust bowl. I mean, a big sandbox is what it would be. The Nile is what gives life, and the Egyptians worship that Nile. So the Nile is powerful to them. And Moses takes out a jug of water and pours it on the, it isn't hard to find sand around there. So he pours it on the sand, and what happens to the water? It changes to blood, exactly. So God is showing his power over the Nile. And this is just to kind of help Moses with all of his excuses, if you will. And Moses' last excuse from verse 10. I am slow of speech, it says. What does that mean? He can't talk very well. I've heard it put out, Dave, that it could have been, well, he should have come and seen me. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not old enough. But he was a stutterer. I've heard that. Okay? But it also could mean, he's been gone from Egypt for how many years? 40. And, if you don't use something, you lose it. And he hasn't spoken the language in 40 years. And so Moses, and that's a legitimate complaint, but it's still an excuse because God is showing him all of these things, and stress can cause stuttering, but 40 years, you lose things. God's response, I love this one. Wes? No, yeah, read verse 11. Yeah. So what is God saying to him? Who made your mouth? Does that sound something like the book of Job, which Moses had written? What did God say to Moses? Hey, Job. What did God say to Job? Hey, Job, where were you when I created the world? Where were you when I put the stars out there? Where were you when I did that? Remember? So Moses is thinking back. He's being chided right now. And God is, maybe, should I say, just a little bit peeved with Moses, because he's seeming to come up with all these excuses. And I got you. I can fix your mouth. Don't worry about it. That's what he's telling him. And so he's a little bit put out, but you go down a few more texts, and it talks about, I'm sending Aaron, who knows it, and he's going to be there to help you. And so on we go, and we're going to get to the last part and the last few minutes here. But it comes to the circumcision. Let's jump down to verse 21, Debbie. Can you read that quick for us? 4:21. Okay, that's why I wanted this read. God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, right? What do you think? Yes or no? God didn't harden Pharaoh's heart. It's like the parable of the sower, where the seed lands. You ever seen a little kid that when you tell them something and you want to prove it, they just get mad on their own? Even though you try and they get madder and madder and madder. Well, that was what Pharaoh was going to be. God didn't harden Pharaoh's heart. He allowed it to happen. Okay? And so, without getting into this really deeply, we'll just go on with that. I hope you can read more about that in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 268, or the Desire of Ages, page 322. The more signs Pharaoh received, the more determined he was his people. You ain't going. Okay? And so another confusing verse is verse 24. It talks about an inn, which is any place. I mean, there were no Motel 6s or the Ritz or anything like that out there Moses could stay in, because it just didn't happen back then. It's wherever they put up a tent to sleep at night is what that's talking about. So, what problem was God having with Moses? What hadn't he done, or what did he do? His youngest son hadn't been circumcised. Oh, I could spend a while on that one. I have one question for you. Do they have TSA circumcision police back there? I'm just going to ask them, throw it out there. But you see, this sign, it was a sign of accepting the covenant, which God had put out with it, and Moses understood this. Okay? And now, the reason, why didn't he do it? His wife didn't want him to. If you read about that in Patriarchs and Prophets, his wife didn't want him to. She thought it was barbaric. Why would I want to do that? It had been done with his oldest. So what was the problem? Moses hadn't been faithful in the small things. How can he be trusted with the big things? So there's no such thing as a little sin, is what it's getting to here. Moses needed to be right with God all the way. And Zipporah, his wife, she does it, and then she takes and throws it at Moses. Throws that bloody piece of skin at Moses. So ultimately, by doing this, it was showing Moses was relying on God and not on his own flesh. Okay, then next week, we'll find out that Moses gets off to a really rough start. Things don't go well on this last 40 years of his life. And so let's bow our heads for our closing prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are indeed thankful we have this time to we can come apart and learn more about the calling and how we need to respond to you and trust in you. Go with us now, dear Lord, as we